Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Post-TweetJam panel discussion. And glad to see everybody here. I'm Christian Buckley. I am an M365 MVP and regional director. And maybe we go kind of the clockwise. Shari, and then Dan and Kirsty.
Perfect. Hi, Shari Oswald. I am also a Microsoft MVP certified trainer and office master. And thank you for having me today.
G'day, I guess that's me. I'm Daniel. Again, like others, MVP in M365 and Copilot down here in Melbourne, Australia. So nice to see you all.
Hey, I'm Kirsty McGrath. We're in Australia, except different. I'm Sydney, better than Melbourne, where Danielle's from.
Don't get into that debate.
I'm also a Microsoft MVP, and I run the adoption user groups for Australia. So I'm very much on the, the productivity change management training side of. So I'm an M365 and Microsoft Teams MVP.
And I should also point out that Kirsty and I did a podcast like a week ago. It went live about a week ago on this topic, or 2 weeks ago. That's been doing really great. So check that out as well. But I'll share links out and follow up. But let's just jump into it. We've got 7 questions. And let's start with question number 1. So love to get your thoughts, and feel free. We don't have to take turns. We can interrupt, talk over each other, because people love that. How has the rise of AI reshaped the way people approach work, both individually and as part of a team?
Wow, this is like a big can of worms, isn't it? Because it all depends on what. We love that answer. It depends.
Shari, it depends.
we have questions on the question, because we could talk about this one for the next couple of days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think for me, it's given me some. I have some writer block sometimes, and it's helped me with that. But we're currently planning the MCT Summit, and one of the sessions that was submitted was like how AI is making us all lazy. And I have to say that session title kind of caught my eye, and we had a discussion about that. And actually, Caruana Katimu was in on that, and she's like, "That's my job, is to make all of this and make you more productive. We're not making you lazy." So it was a kind of an interesting back and forth conversation. Are we being lazy, or are we being more productive?
I argue against that, Lee. I don't see that. I think it makes us much more efficient in certain things that I don't want to spend time doing, so I can move on to other higher productivity activities.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of different takes here. So we've obviously been using sort of generative AI and that's Copilot as well as other AI things, but it's been more in a sort of a conversational type of thing. I ask a question, I get a response back. But how I'm using it at the moment, and what I'm seeing other leaders in organizations use it is more like a collaborative partner. So sort of flipping the conversation and having that type of backwards and forwards and that type of thing in that model. And I think that's a different approach to what people are generally using a ChatGPT or something like that for. Should I say just the more simplistic approach? I think that's evolving as we move forward.
I think we also need to take into effect that AI has actually been around for quite some time, and organizations have also been using it for some time. So I think that shift now more about that individual and team side of things, and how it's really driven some different ways compared to most of the time the individual didn't even realize that they were using it or a part of that world, or using the series or the whatever it is that we're getting into, and the bots and the answering them. We haven't kind of thought about it too much. And I think the difference is that people are now starting to go, oh, hang on a second. So there's that, some coming with that sense of fear. As an individual, with taking over the world, it's the rise of the, with Termini, Skynet. So, but it's coming very much to the forefront. So we're seeing some real division in opinions, and I think that that's really interesting in terms of the way that people are actually approaching it in their workplace. It's that I feel like I'm cheating. I feel like maybe it'll make me lazy, and then you get the other side of it that says no, it's actually really opened up some of the creativity, because I'm not bold clogged in that I can't get past this, or I don't know how to reword that down from 500 words to 250 words. And it's just given me something, and I go, oh, I could rephrase that. And we're seeing people's that understanding around how it could support them start to shift. So I'm really liking the way that that's coming from a productivity standpoint once they're starting to get it. But there's still some struggles. You think you kind of go, oh, I just get it, but some really aren't.
Yeah, I actually was just creating about 40 social media posts right before this session. And I did it in like probably 30 minutes because I had to add some stuff to it. No way I could have done that myself. And, reading through descriptions and coming up with something that would be a great social media post to inspire people to want to be at that session. And so, yeah, I think it's made a big difference for me in my productivity. Team-wise,
that too. It's like I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. Is like, but I just don't have time for it.
Yeah.
So when I used to run, social media for a number of different customer companies, and I would hire college kids to go in and do it and train and kind of monitor quality and things around that and do that. But now I was like, you can go in and automate a lot of that. And so, I was experimenting about a little over a year ago, whenever ChatGPT added the ability to create GPTs. And so one of the first things I did is I went in and I've got a couple standing GPTs that I use for doing social media, where I can point it to a URL or dump content in it, and it already knows what I'm asking for when I add stuff into that GPT or an agent. Another way to look at that, so that it already does that, and its output is always exactly the format that I need and the structure, the number of items that I'm requesting. So it has streamlined that access where I'm not having to go in and do those things manually or hire somebody to go in and do that.
And I think that's where it's going to have a massive impact both for teams and individuals. Well, I'm sure we'll probably touch on agents at some point, but having that sort of the instructions or the system prompt or something like that to get that consistency in output, so that you don't have to redo that over and over again. I think that's going to be that's going to be really powerful.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to question number 2. What are the most surprising or creative ways people are using Copilot to enhance their personal productivity? We're just kind of sharing some scenarios, but
this probably isn't it's probably not. Well, I guess it is kind of creative. It's not that surprising, but it is around the content, the creation, the internal communication side of things. So I was working with an organisation sort of middle of last year around, there was some assistants that were taking minutes and notes and getting transcriptions of town hall meetings and CEO meetings and those type of things, but still doing the generation of internal comms manually. So it's emails, it's Teams messages, it's news articles in SharePoint and things like that. But a way that we approach that and the way that they're doing that now is actually they're now using an agent, but we're using Copilot to take the transcript and then break that out into the key topics. And there's usually some questions, breaking those out into key topics, but then also creating sort of 3 or 4 separate pieces of communication to send out to an organization. So a lot of times when you create a news article or something like that, and it's really, really long, employees tend to sort of skim over it and not really read that. But breaking that out into separate, smaller chunks where it's easier to consume, Copilot was able to do that. And then you double that or team that up with something like Viva Amplify, for example. You've now got you've got content, you've got distribution channels, and you schedule that with Amplify as well. And then all of a sudden, what was 6 to 8 hours worth of work has now come down to sort of 20, 25 minutes. I think that's not that surprising, but it ended up being quite creative by combining, other parts of M365, which is pretty cool.
I think it's the image generators, people, I don't know about you, but in Teams, memes and those things in Teams chats, especially the moving GIFs, are very distracting for me. I don't personally like them. You can turn them off, but now it's gone to a whole other level because it's not just the little memes that they give you as the preset of things. Now you've got all these little moving. Like I created one yesterday because I think I mentioned earlier I was feeling unmotivated this week because of the weather. I'm like, I want to embrace my inner sloth on National Popcorn Day. So I generated an image of a sloth eating popcorn all cuddled up on a blanket. I mean, it's you can almost create anything. There's no way I could, as a non-artistic person, create that in any way, shape, or
form. I like that about that too, Shari, is, with that image creation, and I mean, I've done it myself, where I can sometimes sit there trying to trawl the internet to find that perfect picture that represents what I'm trying to do. We had one recent. I was running some Microsoft Promptathons, and it was a virtual one, and the fellow on there said, "So are we getting lunch?" And it's like, well, we're all sitting at our own computers. But what I did was I created one that was a Microsoft MVP, and we had the microphone, and I had a platter, and it was a Lego lady, blonde hair, MVP t-shirt on, and a platter of sandwiches for him, and when here you go, here's your virtual sandwiches. So that you wouldn't find something like that online, and I know that it's not necessarily surprising, the creative, but it's how you can just flip sometimes the thought into something that's actually real and do it fairly fast than to sit there. I could have sat there for hours trying to find the right picture to, or using someone else's, and instead it's kind of your own, process and customizing it.
But do you then spend hours and hours crafting or going backwards and forwards with your prompt? Oh no, I've got to change my hair color. No, I need glasses. No, I need this. No, I need that.
You could, but I didn't. It was literally, it was so fast in the scheme of the chat that if I had put it in too much later, it wouldn't have it wouldn't given any value basically to the conversation. I was able to do it really quick, really fast. And it was using, the Microsoft Copilot, using the designer side of things to just punch something out really quickly. And I'm seeing others doing very similar. Once they see it done by one, then others pick up on it and just go, that was really cool. I like that, so we're starting to see that little bit of creativity coming in, that you can take your thoughts and actually make something real out of it. And we're seeing it all the time, even in the, I regularly will see, with being a caker, you'll often see them where you get this, hey, it's amazing cake, and everyone's going, I can't create that. That's AI. That's AI. That's AI. That's AI.
People pay attention to pictures and images more than text. So if you want to draw somebody's attention, create an image. Right.
That's it.
Hold back, wind back a little bit. Did you say you're a caker?
Cake, yes.
What is it?
This is a baker, a caker.
She's not a baker. She's a caker. She makes cake.
I'm more about the decorating than I am about the baking. So to me, it's all about decorating, and we can create stuff that we have as a design and then make it in real. It won't look the same, but I'm seeing it done a lot. I'm seeing that creativity done a lot in the arts, where they kind of go, this is something I'd like to make, and they get that visualization, or they work with clients to go, this is what we want, and they're creating it with AI to then put into practice in reality, to build or design when it comes to housing, when it comes to all sorts of things, and working with clients that I know I work with in terms of landscapers, they're big building organizations and using it. And, there's so many different fabulous ways that you can bring it into play in a business, and not just that enterprise type, there's so many other, industries that we're seeing it.
I was just going to add in one of the things that I was just doing this today. I was in 4 different AI tools. So I used Copilot and ChatGPT and was using Grok. And I just did a random search on another tool because the other 3 couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I found this other tool that did it. And to expand the image, take an image and then expand, fill it in and do that. There's a handful.
And what was it called?
Sorry?
And what was that one called?
I don't know. I've got it open in another screen over there. But the point was, though, what I've just interesting is that taking the same prompt and putting it into, 4 different platforms and getting 4 different responses. And it's so easy to do that, to switch between those. But what I'm looking forward to, and I know we're going to get into this with a couple of the other questions and kind of the future look of it, but to be able to go in and create something, and from that, just to be able to say, in my prompt or in the direction into the programming of it, and generate an image, images for each page of this doc or each slide that illustrates this different aspect of what I'm talking about. And I want these themes, these colors. I want, like, here's some samples like that. I want to be able to have that kind of experience. And we're not far away from having that experience.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump over to question number 3. What are the potential limitations or challenges of using Copilot, and how can users overcome them?
Learning how to use prompts. That's the number one thing. You just nailed it in that previous thing. If you can take the same thing and put it in different platforms and you get different results. So where's it coming from? And hopefully once we start getting some consistency, I was doing that, the social media post, I put it in one way, and then I took the next set of questions, just the exact same prompt in Copilot, and got a completely different layout, format, everything. It's like it wasn't learning from what I did before. And that consistency, I think, is the biggest frustration.
And across the apps, the one thing you can do bold here, but you can't do it here. And you can do something else here, but you can't do it there. So even across the teams, you often don't get, and they can be a real challenge because people think that it will be the same wherever they go, and it's really not.
Yeah. I think, I mean, a lot of people, depending on how, and Kirsty, you probably come across this as well, depending on how Copilot's introduced to an organization, it's introduced maybe just for Teams recaps or you know, that type of thing. And then users or people think, well, bugger me, is that all it can do? What else can we do? I mean, is that, you know, what else can we do? And they just don't know that. And I think that is a limitation, right? But it's not. It's just that they aren't educated enough to be able to do that. But I think with the different outputs, so whatever you're putting in and you're getting different different responses or different outputs, it really is also about setting expectations around that too. I mean, you're never going to get to a finished product. Well, I would never think that. I'd never set that expectation. It's always going to need some type of human intervention. And I think a lot of times people are under the impression that Copilot is going to be the silver bullet, and it's not going to be the silver bullet. It's still going to need, not a lot, well, depending on where we go, but some type of human intervention in there too.
Just experienced this yesterday where it came back with the result and it had something that was incorrect. And so I corrected it. I said, no, this point is incorrect. There's this other data that you also have, the updated data. And it came back and it apologized and then corrected, and it changed the output, the statement that it made with that correction in place. So, and again, it's the rest of it was great, but it got one fact wrong. And that's why when I love some of the ability to go in, like the different validation prompts, and to add into the command so that you are having it provide a response, have an output, but as part of that, it's also having it validate its own output, so that you can ensure that, hey, this is factual. This is where this came from.
And not relying. Sorry, you go, Kirsty.
I was only just saying that what you're talking about, Daniel, that user limitation is, people don't understand the taxonomy. They don't understand the document types they can pull. They don't understand the mega verbs and the verbs. They don't understand the tones that they could actually ask for, in there, let alone what a prompt is, and they're doing it search-based rather than conversational-based, that straight command. And when they don't understand some of the taxonomy, and Microsoft have not been great when it comes to helping organizations and individuals or teams know what that taxonomy is. These are the 20 different document types. If it's a template in Office and Word, for example, you can probably ask for it, a resume or whatever. But people don't realize that. So they're finding that that's become a real challenge inside businesses, because they'll get some of those basic ones that are there, or you've given them a bit of education, and they're the ones they stick to because they don't know how much further they can actually go, let alone the pulling of information that may not be correct because there's not been the right guardrails potentially put in place or pointed to the right, or, as you said, Christian, so those challenges when they are
we're too guarded and they're not pulling from the larger data.
That's it.
Yeah, so understanding the solution of what is the content that I'm actually accessing, that I'm leveraging here, what has been trained on, what is the scope of that is so critical to this as well. I mean, it's the same problem that you have it's a similar problem where, people that are putting proprietary information, dumping it into like a chat GPT because they like the responses better. It's like, yeah, thank you. You just trained the world on your proprietary information.
Right.
Versus something that, like, one of the first things I did when I had the ability to go do was build a SharePoint Copilot specifically for a subset of data that only I could get into, and then start experimenting and asking questions and training it on that and feeding that. And so knowing the scope of that Copilot, I limited what I was asking it for and to go and do based on that training. But yeah, it's you that's like a fundamental part of, we've been talking around, it's like adoption is probably the biggest limitation to growth. Education and adoption as part of that is educating people, helping them understand, here's the scope, here's how it works, and then this is why you need to be more specific with your prompts to get more accurate results back.
Did you just say training?
Training.
We might know some people. We might know.
The sad part is when it goes all very pear-shaped, or they haven't done it, it's so much harder to untangle it from a change perspective. It takes so much longer to get over a negative than to start from the positive, and they're just not starting from the right. So those limitations and challenges can be not there if they've got the right education, because they know how to work around it. They don't see it as a challenge or a limitation because they just haven't started from the right foundational level in the first place.
But I think the SharePoint Copilot agents are going to be, for a lot of people, the first interaction with Copilot they're going to have. And if it's done well, like you're saying there, Christian, I mean, there's some really amazing things and use cases that can, that somebody's first interaction with Copilot is going to be an agent that you've built on proposals that are scoped down to 6, 7, 8, 10 different documents that are actually going to be really, really, fine-tuned into the content of that, rather than drawing in content from proposals that are in 15 different sites and Teams chats and emails and things like that. You've got a specific, set of content that's going to be very, very accurate.
Yeah. Now the guardrails are built into agents, right? And that's what I like about them, because you're not leaving it open to whatever you find that might be related to this. It's like, this is all I want you to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Copilot is not Delve.
Correct. Yeah.
It's not?
Don't go down.
All right, let's jump to question number 4. How are businesses leveraging Copilot to streamline operations and achieve better outcomes? We've been talking a lot about like personal productivity and things, but especially from a consultant perspective, like all of us have that perspective. What are you seeing? What are companies talking about doing or actually doing?
I'm seeing a lot of success with, this is pretty specific, but around tender writing. So companies that are writing a lot of tenders or responding to a lot of RFQs and those sort of things that are, generally you've got, pretty stock standard block text that you respond to, that you need to include in those responses a lot. So having a bank of content with those responses, now we're using agents for that now, but being able to say, from a question from a tender that's come out or some other type of document, do we have a response to this type of question? And then here's the response, and you get some really good time savings from an operational point of view, being able to build those documents out rather than a big one-shot prompt. You can then gradually sort of architect the document specifically, rather than trying to generate something once with a really long, massive prompt, breaking it out into those type of segments. I've seen companies and organizations, get some really good benefits from that.
Some of the discussions I've had there, it's a lot around coding. So girl, don't code. Yeah. I can read code, I can tweak code, but I am not going to write the code. And in some of the circles, some of the people I was talking to last week, they were like, oh my gosh, it fixed my Excel formula, or it wrote this entire automate for me. That's huge. That's huge when you are girl no code.
Well, I think that probably the fastest growth, the pickup of Copilot, the excitement was around the GitHub Copilot. Yeah. I mean, the community and people are just, fanatical about it.
It's just tedious.
Great to see that. Yep.
Yeah, I remember taking my first computer class in high school, so I'm dating myself. Green text on a black screen, and we had to make it draw a box and then make the box go away all through. And I got a semicolon instead of a colon or something stupid, and it wouldn't work. And I never want to do this ever, because it was just tedious. And I think it's taken a lot of that tedium out of it.
Mm. Even recently, I mean, even writing JSON for list formatting or column formatting or things like that. Yes, I know we can probably all do that. It'll take us X amount of time, but now, you can just do that really, really quickly, and you get almost, and that's an example of sometimes is a one-shot prompt in, format this column with this data type in this way, and then you can save a lot of time doing that.
I'm seeing it unblocking things. So, for example, people who don't necessarily have the knowledge, and they then, ask Copilot to help them follow the bouncy ball and give examples to make it real for them. So they're then following it and they're going, hang on, I've come up with following the bouncy ball, but hit the challenge now because I'm following the bouncy ball, and then asking, and how do I get past that? How do I get past that? And we're seeing more of a learning business going on, because we've got people that are doing just in time, and that's different because now we've got that just in time learning. It changes the nature of an organization where they might be quite sort of stuck in their way and not learning and doing the same old, and you get to a learning business where you're actually able to respond much faster because you're untangling things much faster. That is where we're starting to see some cracking paces happening inside businesses, which are going to be tough for those that aren't doing it to try and keep up, because if you've got an organization that it's a learning business, we really start to see some change in growth.
Yeah, not really answering the question, but around this topic, something that we do need to see more of. I had hoped to see much more starting like this last fall with the most recent Ignite 2024, for example, to see more outcome based examples from the field, not Microsoft marketing, but I want to start to see real examples. How are people using this? I think there's such an opportunity to go out and to share those stories and more examples of that. And I think it'll really open it up. And again, it goes back to where we're talking about, adoption of an individual in an organization, but even community-wide, it's the same problem. I think we get stuck in, we see things through the lens of our understanding, and we need that lens to be expanded. I need to see what are the other creative things people are doing, be like, wow, I never thought of that. I could be going and doing this. So now that we're talking more in the agent world, agents that can trigger and start up other agents and doing more complex operational activities, I think we're going to start to see some really great scenarios and stories that are coming out of what companies are doing.
Yeah, instead of all the marketing hype that may or may not work.
Yeah, less marketing, more real. Yep.
Mm.
All right. Question 5. What role does organizational culture play in successfully adopting AI tools like Copilot, and how can leaders foster a culture that embraces AI-driven productivity?
Very good question. I could probably talk about it forever, but I won't. But it's a lot about look. We've seen all the stats and everything like that about leaders and CEOs knowing that they should be in this space, but they don't really understand themselves what the benefits are themselves. So getting those leaders in and using the tools and being a practitioner of utilizing these tools, I think is a really big thing that needs to happen, and that will then be able to. It's like there was a podcast the other day with Connor on the Work Lab about behavioural change, and changing the behaviour of your organisation to be more AI driven and understanding how to implement. You were speaking about the outcomes before, but how can we get to that outcome better and quicker, and utilize that time to be doing other things? So it's a different type of mindset, different type of approach to technology in that respect. But a big part of it is, well, for me personally, would be around that executive CEO level, and actually them being practitioners of the tools and the applications themselves.
Yeah, it comes from the top down. I worked for an organization that they kept saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do so, and they didn't. And so it never was. This was just around SharePoint adoption, and we're in the same boat now. This is a new tool that people are leery of. They need to have confidence in it, and until the leadership says, it is okay, but within these guidelines, and the other main thing they have to is provide training for people, because you just throw them out in the middle of the ocean and expect them to swim, and they're going to fail. And coming from an HR background, I've fired people for doing silly things that they did unintentionally, and I can see that people doing like you were saying, Christian, taking proprietary information, taking it out to ChatGPT, not understanding that they're now exposing that private information to the world model. That's something somebody get fired for just because they didn't know. And so they need to. Those leaders need to invest in training for their people.
Well, before you're training on it, though, I mean, this is something I think we all have experienced. We've had. I know I've had this conversation with each one of you. But I've said the statement, like piloting, trying things.
Yeah.
So you talk about a cultural aspect. If you're a culture that doesn't experiment, you don't allow people, give them that room to go out and play with that. That's where you're not going to learn. Like, what are we even training people on? What have we learned about this? How does this fit in? What are the ways that you can hear all the scenarios, all the examples through conferences and content out on the web? What actually applies to your organization could be, some slice of subset of that. And it can be very nuanced. But if you're not playing with the technology, understanding fundamentally how it works, and then starting to look at examples, pilot, do one pilot, learn about that, expand it, pilot again, with a few more people, different projects, different roles.
Different roles.
How are project managers using it? How is engineering using it? How's HR using it? And find those places. Then you're going to if you have that built into your culture, change your culture to be able to do that. Then you are going to find those opportunities where it is going to save time, save money, allow you to be more productive.
Yeah.
I'm saying we come back. I mean, I just spoke about being that learning business, and where they get permission to slow down so they can speed up. That's a different type of a culture where it is okay to play. One, they provide them with the licenses. Two, they give them more permissions around things that they can actually do and time to be able to build. It's that giving them some space to be able to learn and grow, be innovative. Do you have the authority to be able to create? Because not all organizations or leaders actually provide that area of growth that people need to take these tools to the next level. Because we can start on some of the basics, but if we've not been given the license, and we've not been given the license to play, to be able to be that learning type business, then it's not going much further. And they need to have that first and foremost, because if they haven't got the time to also stop, learn, play, grow, create, and be innovative, and they're had that a bit of autonomy to be able to do. Now, not everyone is going to come at it and have those kind of skills. So if they don't, then how do we then teach them? Yeah. Because we've got those within the business that are, the early adopters and are driving it forward? Are you communicating what you're doing? Are you helping the business to understand how it's creating growth and it's worth stopping and learning? Because a lot of people don't like as well to stop and actually learn. They just want to get their job done and I'm just going to go home. So we've also got to create learning opportunities for people on top of it, because not everyone is a learner in their role. Whether we like it or not, we should be, but doesn't mean that we do. So that culture that comes into play from that senior leader all the way down to the fellow that's jumping in the truck and having to use his iPad when he's out on the road, but the iPad has got Copilot and agents connecting and doing this to give them information. If they don't even understand that that's actually what it's doing, you're not breaking down some of the fear of, well, you're already using it, guys, and helping that, the fear, or I'm cheating. There's a lot of that. Oh, but I'm cheating if I use it. We've got to break those things down from a senior leadership perspective as well.
All right. Question 6. What skills or mindsets will be essential for individuals and teams to thrive in a world increasingly powered by AI?
Don't do what's working. Don't continue to do what. Try and look at improving the way that you work and not continuing to go along with things that you've always done is a mindset, I think. There's a change mindset that I think needs some importance, stopping and thinking about, I've been doing this same process for the last 4 years. It works. It's not broken. Why change it? But there are opportunities there to improve that process and make it better. That will help in that one individual process. So just having that mindset of being open to change.
I would have to 100% echo that, because you have the people, like you said, I've always done it this way. I'm always going to do it this way. And they're not in every capacity of their job. They become entrenched, and therefore when you're entrenched, you're not able to move because you're dug in. Right. And I 100% agree with that. Open mindset.
It might actually make your job even more exciting. You might be in this, robotic frame of mind of going, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then you've got this new thing and you might be excited again.
Well, see, I'm the opposite. I'm one of those people that I get bored real fast. Why I got out of HR is the day-to-day drudgery of dealing with, the same thing every week. When we're in tech and in the learning space, you always have to be learning new things. And I get excited about that. Not everybody's excited about that.
I've always been like a new product introduction person because I'm on more of the marketing side of things. The operational ongoing, it just killed me for the same reason. However, one of my favorite people to quote the same quote, but Edwards Deming, the idea of optimizing the system, it's a continual process. You've optimized it based on that. And things are humming along, everything's working. And then you go back and look, okay, how can we improve upon it? There's always room for improvement because the business rules change, the users change, your clients change, technology changes, something is always changing. There's always going to be a reason to go in. How can we improve this? How can we do better on this? Even if you're 40% more productive than you were a year ago, okay, how do you over the next year become even 40% more productive? We'll never reach perfection because we're human, so there's no fear of that. But it goes back to continually learning, understanding the things that are out there. I say on an individual basis, if somebody wants to know what can I go and do, first thing I would say is there's so many free courses out there, or inexpensive, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, various sites that are out there if you already have a license, but there's YouTube videos where they offer a lot of it for free. But go through that, intentionally sit down and go through and understand kind of the ABCs of how these technologies work and play around with it. We learn from play, experiment, try some things on a personal level, and then what can you take into your team, to your organization from there?
I see that, that curiosity. And enthusiasm is, it's a bit of a superpower. If you're quite enthusiastic about something and you're kind of getting in and you're willing to learn, that sense of enthusiasm about something in particular, we see some real shifts inside businesses where they kind of go, oh, I could really do this. And that sense of curiosity, so many are very, as you say, used to doing the same thing. And I do the whole, there's a button up here in Outlook where it just goes reply with a meeting invite. And they go, there is? And it's like, guys, get curious, because, Microsoft are very good at creating tools for us to speed us up. It's been brought in for a reason. And so many times I see people change their whole environment back to the old view just so they can keep going on the way that they want to go. It's like, no, Microsoft have brought that out because they have found, and there's a ton of research behind it, it's going to speed you up. It's actually going to be quicker if you do this. So go get curious about it and try and be a little bit more enthusiastic as that bit of a mindset, to be able to push ourselves. And not everyone is necessarily enthusiastic about it. So I guess there are a few things here in terms of that learning and challenging ourselves. And often we don't want to do that challenge because the challenge can be scary if we've not been given permission to grow.
Well, I'm just thinking this too. It's funny. I was looking at like Daniel's newsletter, which excellent newsletter, go subscribe to. But it just reminded me, like you share like productivity tips. We've all shared productivity tips. We've done sessions on those kinds of things and talk about that. We need to be sharing more. If you want to know like what you could change in your organization is, what are you setting up for your direct reports for your organization? If you're at the bottom up, like what can you do to create more of an atmosphere where people are sharing ideas? Hey, I went and did this. I learned this information. Share that with others. I learn so much more. I like from conferences, for example. Think about all the sessions you don't have time to go to because we're limited by time. And so then I go and I ask questions to the people that did participate in those sessions. Similar, if I'm experimenting, I'm trying this, I want to go learn from what other people do. I might then decide from that, I need to go take that same course or watch that video, or, hey, there's no need for me to go and try that. Kirsty said it was junk. Don't waste your time on this. I love that aspect of it. So we need to be more community focused and sharing focused. I think we'll all get much more out of the technology and learn faster if we can tap into that hive mind.
Do y'all want to hear a fun fact?
Sure.
Talk about entrenched lack of productivity. Do you know that the QWERTY keyboard, and it's called the QWERTY keyboard because if you read it across the top left, it spells QWERTY, was actually designed to be inefficient because back in the typewriter days, the women were typing so fast, the little hammer things were getting stuck on each other. So they rearranged the keyboard to be inefficient. So to Kirsty's point, it's like that, we want to move forward. We know this is more efficient, but people keep going back to what's inefficient. And we live with that inefficiency in our keyboards that we are using every single day. Fun fact.
All right. Final question. How do you see AI and Copilot evolving in the next few years? And what impact will this have on productivity at work?
I'm going to take the agent path because I think that's going to be extremely impactful when we start thinking about multiple different agents working together and handing off different tasks to each agent without any sort of human intervention. There will be, it's obviously at some point, but
it will lead to the singularity. But yes, yeah. I'm for it.
Yeah. Taking those, or when actions come around as well, but the combination of those things there is going to have a really big I think is going to have a really big impact.
I think people are going to get better at asking for the right things. I think that's how it's going to evolve. Because, kind of like, again, I go back to, I used to go into a library and there was a card file and you'd have to look for a specific topic and find a book. Well, now with the searches on the web, you go in and you search for that topic. You've really got to narrow it down. And this is the next evolution of that. when I'm searching for things, I need to search for not just a topic, I need the context of that topic too. And I think that's the next step in how we think about how we search for and ask for things.
When I look at it and I look at that whole Internet of Things and just the mass data that we've actually got out there, and even on the processes of particularly doing something, say you're inside an application, it got to the point Microsoft will create the button where it would group it all together for you so you could just push it and people will go, yay. Now we're seeing it as the people having to create the button effectively to do it. So we're starting to shift some of the behaviors where, Microsoft are dictating what happens when you push the button to the individual having some more control over what happens if they wanted to have a button to push. So they're kind of doing it from an asking standpoint. And when we look at that Internet of Things where there's so much information out there, distilling it, and you do a search on a particular topic, how many hundreds of thousands of results, whether it's true or not true, trying to bring things and distill some of that information. It's that surfacing that I'm particularly loving, that I'm, hoping that as we move forward, we get a better knowledge base, because we've just got so much data out there that's not necessarily always, the best. So some of that elimination of potentially we'll see the true to the false facts thrown through.
I think that's the key thing. I mean, I was thinking the exact same down the path of IoT and all this data. We're moving from a world of where we're reactionary, we're pulling the data in, looking at it, analyzing the data. AI can help us analyze more quickly to find patterns that, if we're looking at an eyeball numbing spreadsheet that's just massive, or a data set, to try and find those patterns to be able to do that. But beyond that, the next step for that is proactive, a predictive analysis of that. And we saw this with some demos that Microsoft had provided that's looking at like the manufacturing world and things, as well as AI with IoT, being aware of what's happening in a plant, for example, and pressure here and heat of these gauges and these different areas. And to know that where I see this fluctuation, this change, 9 times out of 10, that leads to a burst pipe in this area. Go look at this area. Within the information worker world, we're going to see more of that. For when I'm asking for something, it's kind of like with search. A problem with search today is that so many problems with it. Am I asking for the right things? Am I using the right keywords, tags? Was the content, does it have those right keywords and tags? Was it archived the right place? Do I even have access to it? Like all of these different things that can degrade the search experience. In the AI world, like us asking that, it understanding the context, what other questions we've asked, what other work that we're asking on, it could even come back and say, like, based on what you've asked, I could provide this, but I think you're missing these pieces, and this would give you this. Like we're getting to that place where it's able to go in and logic see the context of what we're asking and apply logic that and give us answers, responses, output that is just very different than what we actually asked for.
You inspired me there, Christian, with something, because you said, like, I think people are going to start producing things with the design in mind. What is the end in mind? Like, I started scrapbooking at one point, and I stopped just taking photographs of events. I started taking photographs I knew would look good in my scrapbook, that, how I wanted to represent that event. And kind of the same thing. I think people are going to start designing their documents, designing their architecture with the thought of how would this come out of a chat, a AI result if I were to ask for it. I just had a little light bulb. Thank you.
Well, I know
that might be a blog post.
Part of that answer, but it just made me think too, is it's like, why using AI to make sure you're coding so you don't need to do testing, because why would you include mistakes or bugs? Just don't code those into your result. There's humor there for people that are testers, understand that joke. It's like, we don't need to test because we're just going to code it the right way the first time.
Well, I know I don't have Mensa mentality to know, well, I'm certainly not on that sort of spectrum, but I know it's great to have something that is potentially on that, to be able to ask those kind of questions, to surface things that I might actually need, to have those thoughts where I can go, okay, but I can still challenge them because I am a free thinker, and I can go and then go, do I really think that's correct? And is it in line with my culture, morals, knowledge, all those things? So sometimes it's good to have something as a different point of view to challenge me. And I like that.
Well, hey, thanks everybody for participating. So Shari, Daniel, Kirsty, it's great having this interaction. Thanks for participating, staying up late for us. I guess it's midday for you guys in the future. Thanks everybody for participating in the Collab Talk Tweet Jam for this month of January 2025. And we'll see you back next month with a new topic. So we'll see you later.
See you later.
Take care.